Would like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No proclamations, no resolutions.
Tune in for November 29th.
Okay, Commissioners, we have the consent agenda. In
Yep, minutes first.
Approval of the regular session.
I keep overlooking that. Second week in a row.
Yeah, it's
I'll
okay.
be remiss. I'll be remiss if we don't approve the regular session minutes from November 8th, last Wednesday. So I'll take a motion to accept the minutes, approve the minutes from November 8th.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey,
Aye.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Ubel,
Yes. Okay. Now we have the consent agenda, which we were provided last Friday, or last Thursday, actually, because of the holiday on Friday. We've had a chance to review it, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as shown in the session schedule today.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey,
Aye.
Mr. Ubel,
Yes. And turning over to page 6, we have the non-consent agenda. The first item, 11, is to pay our bills. Resolution 171-17 in the amount of $1,961,588.68. Can we have a motion to pay our bills?
So moved.
Second.
Humphrey,
Aye.
Mr. Painter,
Yes.
Mr. Ubel,
Yes. Next, Judy Eschman, Department of Job and Family Services. Welcome.
Good morning. Item 12 is my recommendation with the concurrence of Thomas J. Eigel, Interim County Administrator, to approve the rescission of the Memorandum of Understanding by and between Clermont County Board of Commissioners, the Butler County Board of Commissioners, and the Warren County Board of Commissioners. As the local area chief elected officials, the Warren County Board of Commissioners as the fiscal agent, and the Area 12 Workforce Investment Board as the required partners as outlined therein pursuant to the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, Section 121B1B, heretofore ratified by the Clermont County Board of Commissioners on 6/26/17, and in lieu thereof, to approve the revised Board Memorandum of Understanding between said parties, which outlines the parties' roles, responsibilities, and funding commitments for the operations and funding of the local area workforce development system and the Ohio Means Job Centers in local area 12 for state fiscal years 18 and 19, effective for the period of July 1/17 through June 30th of 19, and subsequent thereto to authorize David H. Ubel, President of the Board of County Commissioners, to execute the Memorandum of Understanding for and on behalf of Clermont County, Ohio, pursuant to and in compliance with the terms and conditions specified therein.
Okay. Getting rid of the old one and bringing in the new one.
Yes.
Okay. Can I get a motion then to approve the rescission of the Memorandum of Understanding between Clermont County's Board of Commissioners, the Butler County Board of Commissioners, and the Warren County Board of Commissioners, and in lieu thereof, to approve the revised Memorandum of Understanding between the parties, and also to execute the new Memorandum of Understanding on behalf of the county.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Humphrey,
Aye.
Mr. Ubel,
Yes.
Mr. Painter,
Abstain.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Judy, your item 13. Tom, you want to read that? Or
actually, Abbott there is here, and he's
Okay.
going to do an explanation, and we'll be happy to read it there and after.
Great.
Good morning. My name's Abbott Thayer. I'm a partner at Dinsmore and Scholl. Kind of the short form version of all of this is we're requesting that you authorize a public hearing in connection with Allen County's issuance of hospital revenue bonds for the benefit of the Mercy Healthcare System. As you probably know, Mercy Healthcare has got facilities throughout the state of Ohio. I believe they're in 24 or 25 separate counties, different counties. And they'll be Allen County will be issuing bonds on its behalf in an amount presently estimated not to exceed $750 million. About $550 million of that is refunding, and $200 million will be new money. The public hearing is required for several reasons. First of all, some of the refunding proceeds were spent within the county, so that would be one reason. The second reason is of the $200 million of new money, Mercy's not exactly sure where that's going to be spent, but part of it may be spent within Clermont County, so that would be the second reason to do it. The bonds, if and when issued by Allen County, will not be the obligation of Clermont County in any fashion. In fact, if Clermont County were the issuer, they wouldn't be the obligation of Clermont County. They would be solely the obligation of the Mercy Healthcare System. That's pursuant to the Ohio Constitution and Chapter 140 of the Ohio Revised Code. But this removes the Clermont County even one step beyond not being obligated. So that's kind of the nutshell version. Would you like me to read the title or the explanation, or?
No, my question is, initially when we got the documentation, the estimated amount, and in the documentation it says 850 million.
Right.
Has it been reduced to 750, or are
I
we
think
just
they're
leaving
going
that
to
estimate?
leave the 850 million. I was just at a
That's okay.
similar meeting in another county a couple days ago, and with the one of the chief financial officers, and he said the present best guess is that issue probably about 750 million.
Up to 850. That's right.
Yeah, this particular agreement has been in effect since May 1 of 2008.
Right.
It is in compliance with the Ohio Revised Code.
Right.
The revised code requires that counties be indemnified from the actual obligator here.
Okay.
But there was, when I read through the entire thing, there was Clermont County, there were no projects identified for Clermont County with this money this year.
Alrighty.
Okay.
No other questions. I will entertain a motion for Resolution 172-17 as referenced in item 13.
Which establishes Wednesday, December 6th, 2017 at 11 a.m. at the board's regular session as the date and time of the public hearing required to be held in and as it relates to this issue and the 2018 series hospital facility revenue bonds by the County of Allen.
Okay. Can we get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Ubel?
Yes. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Morning. This is a recommendation to approve the solicitation of requests for proposals for the provision of transit management services in Clermont County and authorize placement of a legal notice in the Clermont Sun on 11/23/17 with RFPs to be received until 2 p.m. local time on 12/26/17 in the office of the Board of County Commissioners, 101 East Main Street, Batavia, Ohio, where they'll be publicly opened and acknowledged, and the notice is also posted on the county's website.
Those transit management services will include?
Currently, it pays for the director of Clermont Transportation Connection, who's not actually a county employee. It's employed, that person's employed by the current operator, which is First Transit LLC. And it also gets us all their back office knowledge and resources as far as financial, how to deal with all the federal regulations and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Could we get a motion then to approve the solicitation of the request for proposals for transit management for Clermont County and to authorize the clerk of the board to place a legal notice in the Clermont Sun on Thursday, November 23rd, 2017 as referenced in item 14.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Ubel?
Yes. Thanks, Andy. Item 15.
Item 15 is a recommendation to approve the President of the Board of County Commissioners designation of Suzanne Sheets, or Suki Sheets, Director, Office of Management Budget, as acting county administrator to perform the duties of the county administrator when he is absent from his office due to illness, death, vacation, resignation, or removal, effective immediately and until such time as the county administrator returns to his duties or the Board of County Commissioners appoints a new county administrator to fill the vacancy.
So this county administrator is our temporary county administrator?
Yes.
Okay.
Interim.
Interim. I'm sorry.
Sounds better than temporary. doesn't it?
Yes, it does sound much better. I'm sorry I used the wrong word.
That's okay.
Interim.
The interim.
Okay, can we get a motion then designating Suki Sheets as acting county administrator to perform the duties of county administrator when our county administrator is absent from his office as referenced in item 15.
So moved?
Second?
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Yule?
Yes.
Suki,
She's not here. Oh, here she is. So.
Suki, before we move on from that, you're okay with doing that, right? Since we've approved it?
just could never leave.
Okay. Okay.
You know, also the deputy or the administrator is also responsible for filling up the peanut jar, the M&M jar.
The M&M jar.
Right, didn't you tell her that, Tom? You've been doing that for several years now.
I have never done
It's
that.
because the backup county administrator is the one that's
What?
emptying the M&M jar.
Yeah, you,
Actually, it's Andy who eats it all. That's it.
multiple
It's the only way I can get through the afternoon, okay?
All right, item 16.
Item 16, we've got a couple financials. First, in our water project special assessment, this is a debt fund from special assessment proceeds. We have to increase it $20.34. I had to wait to this week because Budget Commission met last week. So this is reflective of the additional money needed to pay that debt service at the end of this year. And then sewer, for the same reason, I had Budget Commission meet last week to increase the revenue estimate for the carryover funds. And we're going to go ahead and appropriate those. So that'll allow us to transfer excess sewer funds back to our capital fund outside of here, as well as to finish paying off the debt for the rest of this year. In health insurance, last week we did an appropriation increase. I've got another one because we did another revenue estimate to increase it for the advance that we gave them, the second advance we gave them. So we're going to go ahead and appropriate $680,000 to health insurance. Some of that will be used to pay back the advance, so you'll see that before the end of the year. Some of the advance, not all of it. We'll get a good chunk of it paid back this year.
Can we get a motion then for the supplemental appropriations as referenced in item 16?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Yule?
Yes. And prior to the public hearings at 11 o'clock, we have a need for executive session pursuant.
Oh, the add-ons
The two add-ons.
that are to your right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Overlooked those with the public hearing add-ons here. But the, okay, Wade, you're in the queue. Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, all.
Morning.
Your add-on today is a recommendation from myself, Wade Grabowski, with the concurrence of Mr. Thomas J. Eigel, Interim County Administrator, to award the bid for the Clermont County Treasurer's Office remodel project pursuant to the plans and specifications to John P. Tumlin and Sons out of Harrison, Ohio, for the lowest and best bid received on 10/26/2017 in the amount of $81,980, and to execute the contract for the Clermont County Treasurer's Office remodel by and between the Board of County Commissioners in Clermont County, Ohio, and John P. Tumlin and Sons, with said services to commence upon issuance of a written notice to proceed from the Clermont County Facilities Management Department, and to be completed on or before 12/31/2017, pursuant to and in compliance with the terms and conditions specified therein, and the award of bid, and contingent upon a revised certificate of liability insurance, which includes the requirement of builder's risk insurance, the Ohio Department of Insurance certificate of compliance for the Ohio Casualty Insurance Company relative to the bid guarantee and contract bond submitted as surety therefore, and the release of the purchase order required in concert with requisition number 5982-00 dated 11/14/2017. This is the Treasurer's Office that we've been talking about. This provides full ballistic. We did not go with the option that we had as far as the bid, so this is full.
We get a motion then to award the bid for the Clermont County Treasurer's Office remodel project to John P. Tumlin and Sons, Ltd., and which also includes the contingencies as referenced.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Yule?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Wade,
Mike.
what's the time frame that?
We have our
This is
pre-construction meeting. As soon as I get done with executive session, we scheduled a pre-construction meeting for this Friday morning. So we will discuss the entire timeline. Jeannie will be there. The treasurer will be there and present. We confirmed that this morning. She's at a conference right now, but they're going to be back Friday, and that's why we waited till Friday. If we had our choice, we would have had it this afternoon at 2, because this is a timeline that's pretty narrow windowed, but we'll see how it works.
Okay.
Okay?
Wade, what about the rest of the remodel, treasurer's remodel down there in the lunchroom area? And is that going to, when's the finish date for that?
You haven't been there, down there? I know Commissioner Painter.
A week ago, maybe.
A week ago. We received our rough-in permits yesterday. Carl's folks were down there yesterday and gave us our good color ticket, so thank you.
You mean we actually have to go through Carl for our own work?
I make it mandatory. We're
have
no different than anybody else. We just do like the normal citizens do, so no favoritism, but I wouldn't want that because there's a degree of liability for my department. When you have the chief building inspector stamping everything, then that assures me that everything is in fact done correctly. So I feel that that's always going to be necessary. Although I don't have a completion for that project as far as dates, second side of drywall is going on now. Electrical rough-in is done. So it's moving fairly quickly.
Before year end.
Before the year's end? Tom, my interim director said, my county administrator said, yeah, it's going to be done before the end of the year. He didn't give me a choice.
And I understand the only long lead item there is the glass itself. So we might we might have the project finished and be waiting on the glass to be installed, but it can still be used.
Yeah, it'll be able to be used, and we'll confirm all of that on Friday.
Okay.
And I think it's important that the treasurer is there to hear exactly what our contractor is going to say, and then we'll move on from there. And then obviously I'll be responsible for managing the project.
Good job.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks. All right, the second add-on, Tom, do you want to read that regarding the appointment?
Sure. The second add-on is a recommendation to appoint Mark Simon, the General Manager of Homewood Suites, to serve on the Clermont County Convention and Visitors Bureau Board of Trustees, and he would be the hotel motel industry representative, and the term is 11/15/17 through 8/31/19.
Okay. We get a motion then to appoint Mark Simon to the Convention and Visitors Bureau Board as referenced in the add-on.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Yule?
Yes. Okay. Now we have need for executive session pursuant to 121.22 G1, G2, and G3 of the Ohio Revised Code. First, to consider the dismissal and/or discipline of a public employee. Secondly, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes, the sale of property at competitive bidding, or the sale of other disposition or of unneeded, obsolete, unfit for use property. And third, to confer with the prosecuting attorney regarding pending or imminent litigation respectively. Can we get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter? Mr. Yule?
Yes. We'll be back shortly. Okay, we are past the 11 o'clock hour. We have a public hearing today. Today's the date, time, and location for the public hearing on the petition for the proposed annexation of 4.3989 acres of real property from Stone Lick Township to the village of Owensville, Clermont County, Ohio. Heretofore filed in the office of the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday, August 22nd by Michael Manier, attorney at law, for and on behalf of Rick McAvoy as the designated agent for the petitioners, and comprising a part of parcel identification number 311205A015P, and all of the parcel identification number 302913F100 in compliance with Section 709.02 of the Ohio Revised Code. So just as a reminder for those that are here today, please sign in up at the front so we know who's been here. In addition, we have Alan Edwards today. He's the Assistant Prosecuting Attorney, and we'll swear anyone in that has testimony in favor of or in opposition to the stated petition, with the exception being an attorney at law. So Michael Manier is the attorney at law for and on behalf of sorry, I guess we'll start with, does anybody have?
You may want to bring us out of executive session first.
No, sorry.
Would you let the record reflect that they
Thrown something
returned,
at me.
from executive session with no action taken at 11:03 prior to the commencement of the public hearing for and on behalf of the annexation?
Yeah, we are out of executive session.
Nick?
And we are in the public hearing, as I mentioned.
You're going to do this. Want to ask if anyone?
So, first and foremost, is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the project? Craig? Like to describe the?
It's actually, I think the order is for the agent.
Craig, you're going to be last.
You're coming, bud.
Good morning. My name's Mike Manier. I'm the attorney at law. I'm representing Rick McAvoy, the agent for the petitioner. Rick was going to try to be here. Business called, I assume. Rick's also the mayor of Owensville. This is pretty simple, one of the simplest annexations I've ever done. It's a 2-parcel, 3-owner annexation. All the T's were dotted, the I's, well, the T's were crossed, the I's dotted. Had it been the other way, I would have a problem. I was just informed this morning that Alan indicated on the publication that said there's only 2 owners. That's not a substantial flaw or defect. Had the publication not appeared in the newspaper, that may be considered a substantial defect. But the publication, the notice indicated the date and time of the hearing. That's the purpose of a publication, is to let the public know that there's going to be a hearing, the date and time. It's got the address of the county commissioners. It's also got my phone number and address in case somebody wants to call me. So I don't consider that a defect at all. So anyway, I'm available for questions. As I said, in the annexation business, they call this a 100%er, so not much to it.
Very good.
Any questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the project?
You're up.
Okay.
Or would like to speak.
This is Craig Reisner, our deputy surveyor.
Afternoon.
And he's going to swear you in.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes. Craig Reisner, Clermont County Engineer's Office. The annexation of 4.3989 acres of land to the village of Owensville from Stonick Township. Per your request, I reviewed the plat and description of 4.3989 acres. Land owned by Henry Moeller, deceased Archbishop, St. Louis Church in the village of Owensville, and Raymond and Mary Jo Hawley, and identified as all of parcel number, or a portion of parcel number 311205A015P, which is a cemetery, a portion of the cemetery, and parcel number 302913F100 on the tax maps of the county, and 13F100 is the property owned by Hawley. It's all of that property, but is combined with the adjacent property also owned by Hawley under one description. So if this annexation is approved, these 2 parcels will be combined again and be taxed under one parcel ID number. So it's 2 separate parcels. They have 2 separate tax ID numbers, but it's just because of the political subdivision that causes them to be in two different tax rates. And that the plat and legal description are acceptable for annexation purposes, and the property is contiguous with the village of Owensville. If the Board of Commissioners approve the annexation, a Mylar copy will be required to be supplied by the applicant after the village accepts, which is some time period, 30 days?
It's 90, isn't it?
90 days.
Mick? Unless,
Between 30 and 90 after it receives notice from the commission.
So if the village then accepts the annexation, a Mylar plat will be required to be provided at that time. There are no public roads affected by this annexation, and we have received, the engineer's office has received no correspondence concerning this annexation.
So this is a cemetery and
It's a cemetery and real estate with no buildings or structures on it adjacent to the cemetery.
okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, any more requests for public comment? I asked earlier, but anybody in favor or in opposition to the project? Seeing none, have we had any comments and or correspondence received here, the office
we've
regarding?
received the certifications from the county auditor in and as it relates to the parcels of real estate, and as well as the county engineer's report and the report of the Department of Community and Economic Development. We have received the ordinance from the Village of Owensville and the respective affidavits of delivery of service of the annexation to both the political subdivisions as well as to the owners adjacent to and within a half a mile of the project.
Okay, very good. Well then, no other comments, or we'll then say there's no further comments, close the public hearing. So this will be closed, and on the proposed annexation, and that the disposition of the petition for the annexation will be within 30 days of this hearing pursuant to and in compliance with Ohio Revised Code 709.03. So, we'll go to the next public hearing. Judy?
There is.
Okay.
Thank
you.
I'll get everything to you
Readily.
as quickly as I can, because at the end of the year here.
Truly.
we're kind of winding down.
Okay.
We're probably looking at December 13th for the disposition, if not earlier, but
That would be
not
the
later
last.
than.
Yeah.
Actually, the 20th is our last regular session, but,
I'll provide you with the
Right.
opinion and the resolutions. So
Thanks, Alan.
thanks, Alan.
Okay, then the second public hearing today is, this is the date, time, and location, as published in the Clermont Sun on October 26, 2017, and November 2nd, 2017, for the receipt of public hearing relative to the request of Carl Lamping, Chief Building Official for Clermont County Building Inspection Department, to consider proposed amendments to the Clermont County Water Management Sediment Control Regulations pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code 307.79B. Just a reminder, those that are in attendance, please sign in. Carl, feel free to come on up. Carl is our Chief Building Official for the Clermont County Building Inspection Department and is here to present a brief overview of the process and the proposed amendments to the Clermont County Water Management Sediment Control Regulations.
Thank you. Good morning. In an effort to keep our county water management sediment control regulations, EPA's construction general permit, or the CGP, we were asked by the county administration, when I say we, I'm talking about the Building Inspection Department and the Clermont County Soil and Water Conservation District. Our department is responsible for the administration of the WMSC regulations, and the Soil and Water Conservation District is responsible to generally manage the county's small municipal separate storm sewer system, or generally referred to as the MS4 general permit. And we put together a review committee which proposed changes to the regulations and reviewed the proposed changes to the regulations. And the originally proposed changes, which were reviewed by the committee, included changes to match the requirements of the CGP, and some which required or which exceeded those requirements. There was a number of changes. The committee ultimately, after reviewing all the different proposed changes, rejected every single one of the proposed changes which exceeded the minimum requirements of the current Ohio EPA's CGP permit requirements. I would like to take this opportunity to thank, because I wasn't here last week, to thank the entire WMSC committee for their hard work and efforts. Specifically, I'd like to thank Mr. Jim Watson, who is an engineer and principal at McGill Smith and Puncheon, for taking his time to come here last week and voice it and participate in this open hearing to voice his support. He represents the Ohio Valley Development Council and the Home Builders Association for a lot of who these regulations affect. And his involvement and participation helped the WMSC committee keep the proposed county WMSC regulations within reasonable and rational expectations and gain the support for adoption from both the OVDC and the HPA. I think it's important to know that the county WMSC regulations are a compilation of local requirements in addition to the requirements for the Ohio EPA's construction permit. All of this is required by the MS4 permit. These regulations address the following areas of local concern: the flooding of downstream properties due to development, design of drainage systems and the control of water quantity, management of stormwater complaints. This is a strong tool that we use in our department to help address citizens' complaints and also comply with the MS4 general permit. During the first public hearing for the proposed revisions, which was held on November 8th, staff presented a summary of changes, which I believe you have in front of you, which generally identified the changes made to the WMSC regulations. There was good discussion around the county requirements that are more stringent than the Ohio EPA requirements. As requested, the Building Inspection Department and Soil and Water Conservation District has worked together to summarize the differences and produced a summary of differences between the Clermont County WMSC regulations and the Ohio EPA Construction General Permit, which we've also handed out today as a new handout. The MS4 permit for Clermont County and the multiple townships and municipalities that requires the county to adopt and enforce these regulations tries to address three specific items: construction site runoff control, which includes sediment control and best management practices, or BMPs. These must be as stringent as EPA's general permit. The post-construction stormwater management, which includes design criteria for different management practices, such as detention basins, retention basins, and so forth. The CGP permit does not include any information on how to accomplish this, but only sets out the requirement that it does manage the water. And also illicit discharges, which in the MS4 permit identifies requirements to prohibit them. Again, it says that you have to do it, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. So a lot of these design requirements are placed to the design professional and the county to make sure that things are meeting and working the way they're supposed to. Clermont County addresses all of these various MS4 permit requirements in the WMSC regulations. Additionally, the WMSC regulations seek to address the water quantity, minimize drainage from sites, minimize any increase to downstream flooding problems, and minimize stormwater complaints from our constituents. All of which the EPA does not regulate. So all of these are considered differences. There are several areas in the current water management sediment control regulations where the requirements are more stringent than the Ohio EPA, simply because the EPA doesn't address them. A couple examples I'd like to talk about. there are various requirements in these rules that have been added over the years since the early 1990s, which were deemed required by the county commissioners to manage water and sediment in the county. One example is the current requirement in the regulations to limit detention ponds. Retention ponds. The difference is retention ponds have water in them, detention ponds just slow it down. The regulations require to limit detention ponds around the Clermont County Airport. Detention ponds have a history of attracting birds, and birds and planes don't go well together. So the request essentially from the airport was to limit the retention ponds in these areas around the airport. So these are the regulations where this requirement was placed. A other example of where the county regulations are more restrictive or more have additional requirements is a threshold for when cut and fill exceeds 100 cubic yards. A basic premise behind the WMSC regulations is that the actions of one property owner cannot cause a public nuisance to another property owner. 100 cubic yards was deemed as a reasonable and rational threshold to require approval for the work to be done. We have situations where typically where a homeowner will do some work in their yard and do some yard work and change the grade and slope around their yard to help manage their water. The regulations picked 100 cubic yards as a threshold to simply require a permit because if we can see what the owner proposes to do on paper and say that this work that you're proposing is going to cause a public nuisance, and we can ask them to change it before they start the work. The flip side of that is, if they are allowed to go out because they have less than an acre, they go out and do the work, and the work causes a public nuisance, then we're in a position where the public nuisance is the violation of the rules, and we have to go enforce it after the fact. It's a lot easier to help gain compliance before the work's done versus after the work's done.
And it's less expensive.
Less expensive for the owner, that's right. And in summary, the scope of the work completed by the WMSC committee did not include a review of the current WMSC regulations for areas where the local regulations exceed the state mandated regulations, but only to review the to review the changes in the Ohio EPA permit and revise our current regulations up to that level. There were no proposed changes in the regulations that exceed. There were no new changes that exceed the current Ohio EPA permit. The difference again is between the two regulations is that the EPA permit, the difference between the proposed regulations and the Ohio EPA permit requirements are currently existing and typically due to the county or local controls, which are intended to minimize stormwater public nuisances. I want to thank the board for your time and consideration and request that we have a favorable disposition to the proposed regulations. Any questions?
Thank you.
We will be considering that disposition on the 29th.
If the board wants to proceed based on the two public hearings.
So we could ask for.
This is the first public hearing or the second?
This is the second public hearing.
Yes.
We could ask for public comment, but I would assume there is none since no one else is here. For those in favor or those opposed, any correspondence, Judy?
No,
We've received?
I haven't received any, but they indicated last week that they had a correspondence from the Clermont County Public Health Department in favor of. And I know that there's also a letter from John McManus, who was on the committee, but as the administrator of the Soil and Water Conservation District, that was in support of the proposed amendments to the regulations. Because these are only addressing the amendments that will become part of the regulations.
I imagine.
Is that correct, Carl?
Yes, ma'am.
I know one of the requests, I guess, for the detention ponds was from the airport, so they didn't send us a notice, but they probably would be in favor of.
The I'm specifically talking about was not a change. It is in the current.
It's
regulation.
existing.
It is, okay.
Plan would
Okay.
stay.
All right, good, thanks, Carl. All right.
And this particular exercise is just to pick up the new EPA requirements? Is that's what the really exercise was? And let me just talk about that a second. These particular documents and planning documentation evolve over a period of many years. You know, I am not for any regulation that is above and beyond what EPA, the Ohio EPA requires. And it's just my own personal opinion, you know, from having worked with these regulations for years. Let me just point out one thing that's on this particular sheet says, and Carl, I know you're aware of that, that grading will provide for proper drainage away from lots and parcels. You know, those are particular mandates that deal with inspection criteria and what is what some one person believes is necessary on a residential lot or on a residential build. That can become impossible to comply with because what you believe as a contractor meets those requirements versus what someone else meets those requirements. So, you know, my take on a situation like this is a good place to take a look at scrubbing that document and seeing what has evolved in there that really impacts construction and people trying to build new projects and see if you can eliminate some of those requirements that makes it easier for them to build within our county. So,
Commissioner Painter, are you asking that they go back and look at what's existing versus what they've just proposed to change as new requirements? Or are you asking them to go back in the current document and scrub that document for any of those things that are more restrictive than the EPA requires?
yes, I am.
Okay.
And is that for the current process or for some future update? Are you asking for that for some future update, or you wish them to get
I
back
think
together?
I think while we're doing the revision to it right now is the perfect time to do that.
Carl, is there a time frame on which these have to be passed?
They haven't given us a set timeframe, but just as soon as we can.
Okay.
I am aware, as a result of a conversation with John McManus a number of months ago, that this issue has been on the burner, and that although we are following the regulations of the EPA, that they are not part of our documentation, and that they are awaiting these amendments to address what we are doing in concert with that. I did not hear him address that last week, but
A question, though, for Commissioner Painter, though, but if by taking out that the grading shall be provided proper drainage away from the lots, if you take that out, then what's going to protect the homeowner if a contractor doesn't provide proper draining? And this is the idea, is to protect the homeowner.
I think Carl was gonna talk about that. No, you weren't gonna address that.
I was going to confirm what Mr. Kasikas had to say about the EPA regulations. I'm concerned, I would like to say that I'm concerned that the renovation or revision of the WMSC regulations to take out all non-state or federally mandated requirements, which is kind of what we're talking about here, it will be a lengthy process for a couple of reasons. I think there are good things in the regulations that help developers to be able to say this has to be done that way, and I understand the point of having less. I agree with the point of having less regulations. But sometimes these regulations can help, and they do help us address citizen complaints, which is a big tool, a big time constraint on our office. So I think it's something that can be and should be looked at. But I think that these amendments would not change where we're currently at today with the issues that you're presenting, in my opinion.
Not a problem there. You know, one of the things that you mentioned today was that 100 cubic yard requirement. Mm-hmm. I totally understand that, but 100 cubic yards is an arbitrary amount. It doesn't really, it is way above what the EPA requirements are.
And
for the acre of disturbance.
That's true. And we try to do our best to be as liberal and rational when we apply that, and we're not going out and policing that to the point where, hey, we're measuring it. You know, this is, it's more of an eyeball threshold.
My point is, though, that the document doesn't allow that when you're on the other side of the fence. You know, the requirement is the requirement.
Agreed.
Okay. And that's what my concern is here, is that, you know, when we're revising the document always to include new EPA requirements, we're not going back and taking a look at the document as a whole and saying, hey, look, this document has been in existence for however many years it's been there, 1992, and what is there that really needs to be looked at and revised. You know, if we just come in and say everything that's above here, above an EPA requirement, we're just going to keep, and we're going to keep adding new EPA requirements and other requirements to clarify those new requirements, what you end up with is with a document that's very restrictive and hard to comply with.
I would like to add that I believe the committee looked at other items that weren't just EPA requirements. And one example that I'm talking about is our current regulations do not have an expire process. If you obtain a permit and you choose not to do the work, then that permit, as an administrator, I have no method of housekeeping to be able to close that permit in a certain time frame. These regulations, one of the housekeeping items that we added was a process of expiring the WMSC permit, which we followed exactly with the expiring of a building permit, which is in the building code regulations. And those are some of the housekeeping things that we've added to try to help manage these permits, these regulations, the application of these regulations.
So when is this going to be next reviewed?
I would, unless we change our current process, I would think the next time John brings up the fact that we're behind and we have to bring our rules up to the EPA's rules would be the next time on my calendar, but we can start right away.
When do we suppose that is?
I would say another 3 years. And that's kind of the threshold that we've been updating our regulations as we go along right now.
So if we said in 3 years, you'll go back and review all the changes, because what the code is now is what the code is now, and we're only adjusting it to become compliant with the EPA regulations.
Correct.
In 3 years, if we go back and look to take out those that don't make sense that we've added that aren't EPA requirements. I think we've put in a tremendous effort so far to get to where we are. So I'm reluctant to go ask you to put in another tremendous effort to get the other to do what we've asked. But if we can do it with the next update, that'd be good. And we know in advance that we're going to do it with the next update.
Not knowing when the next update may come,
but we think it's about 3 years.
When was the last time we amended the regs?
2011. I was going to say 07, but 2011. So it's not 3 years. It's
6 years.
6 years. And I mean, this could be something that you give us direction on, and we'll start working on for next year. It doesn't have to be a 6-year process.
So going back and scrubbing the document, you're thinking would last it would take about a year to go through all that, and
it would take a significant amount of time. Yes.
Yeah, and then you'd have to have input from your development community again. Correct.
Correct. We would do the same process, but I think this would be a deeper dive into the regulations, because there are so many requirements that are not state mandated that we have put in to help us manage these complaints and different regulations.
Right now, you're requesting that the board just consider the updates,
yes,
and then over the course of the next year, you're going to scrub the document and come back and go through the same process.
We can do that if that's the desire of the board. Yes, sir.
I think that's a good next step. Mr. Painter, are you in agreement?
We need to meet EPA's.
I think we've put it on the record here that You know, that's the thing that needs to be done.
Carl, who was on the committee, the review committee? I mean, you said you had some developers. It was
We had Mr. Watson is very active in the Home Builders Association and Ohio Valley Development Committee with home builders. We had representatives from the Board of Health, representatives from townships, villages, municipalities, soil and water, building, townships. Union Township was very vocal in this process.
it was interesting, but you had a developer on there as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I don't think it's fair to develop regulations that don't have input from the users.
And townships do,
Provide us with a complete list of that for the record.
Yes, ma'am, I can.
and townships do contribute to the cost of stormwater runoff because of the permit requirements that they pay for, right?
I'm not exactly sure who pays for it, but
Ye-
yes.
Yes, they do.
A lot, a lot. No, point well taken. You know, I've been on the other side of these.
So have I.
When you mandate water runoff requirements for underground storage tanks,
Yes.
you know, that's a tough one. Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Carl, thank you. There's no further comments, then we will close. Well, I guess, Judy, did I ask if there's any correspondence? I asked for the
You did, and I expressed what had been identified in the first public hearing,
Health
but none
Department.
since that period of time.
Okay. Well, then, no further comments. We'll close this public hearing of the proposed WMSC regulation. And thank you for coming. Next, we need to go back into executive session pursuant to section 121.22 G2 and G3 relative to the purchase of property for public purposes, the sale of property at competitive bidding, or the sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use property. And third, to confer with the prosecuting attorney regarding pending or imminent litigation, respectively. Can we get a motion to go back into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Hubel?
Yes, we'll be back shortly. Okay, we are back from executive session. No decisions were made or votes taken, and we do have an add-on. Tom, would you like to read that?
Yeah, we have a personnel action for your consideration. It's in the Water Resources Department. Mary Ann Belt, Executive Assistant 1, termination dismissal, effective 11/15/2017.
Okay, can we get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Hubel?
Yes. And we're at the public participation standpoint or point of our meeting, but there is nobody here in the audience, so I guess there won't be any public participation. So therefore, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Mr. Hubel?
Yes. Thank you for coming, and see you next week.
Actually, 21.
That's right. Next week is Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.